Hey, friends, family, my people. It's 2023 already. Let me first wish everyone a happy new year in hopes of just awakening and new findings and just venturing off into some things that you had not ventured off into before and maybe doing some things you never thought you would do because that's what life is all about. That's what learning is all about. This episode is my first episode for 2023. I want this episode to be one that is about reflection, but at the same time about acceptance. There are a lot of things that happened that went on, between November and today, because I literally took a long nap from November to January. And I'm at the point now where I feel like I am ready. I am ready to move forward and start doing the things that I thought about doing, but there was a step that I had to take first, and now I realize that I want to get into that. And I want everybody to kind of think about the different things that they experienced that they kind of dismissed. Try not to dismiss your experiences because there was something that you needed to learn within that. And within my healing, within my growth, all of those other things, I am starting to become more sensitive with the things that are coming into my life, people that are coming into my life, and recognizing that it's for a reason. So let's talk about acceptance. Let's talk about reflection, because it's the first podcast of the year and it's just necessary. So let's do the work. Let's get it started. Let's get it done. All right, my friends, I am back. It's time to get started on reflection. That's not going to be too long. We'll get started on the reflection. We'll talk that thing through and move on to acceptance. I usually, get my walk in while I'm doing this, but it's cold outside. The older I get, the less tolerance I have for the cold. And I'm inside right now, and I am washing dishes. You might hear a little bit of flushing around. I'm just an everyday girl, Gotta clean my kitchen like everybody else. So I'm going to do that while we have a conversation. A one-sided conversation. The first thing I wanted to just kind of get off my chest was the reflection part. When I think about last year, what I experienced last year, starting the podcast and everything, and feeling that I needed to get some things off my chest and to express some things, I'm really grateful. I mean, I'm truly grateful that, I had the outlet that I was able to speak about some things that I didn't think I ever would because I thought it was probably not going to be right. I felt like, I was going against some folks or whatever, but I learned that you can't be offended about anything unless you're sensitive about it already. That's something that I had to learn because I started to notice that certain things that were said to me that I feel like were not necessary, I started to recognize that it didn't matter more and more. I started to recognize that people saying things that I would have normally had an issue with and would have normally probably had, a fallout with people about, and it just didn't matter. And I think it was literally because I just wasn't so sensitive to it. It just wasn't that big of a deal. It just wasn't anything that was going to change my direction or my life or anything else. And things that other people say to me, I just can't control it. I just have to focus on the things that I can control. So when I think about, like, for instance, I believe that was the last episode that I'd done, and I talked about how, a person had said some things to me in an attempt to offend me, and it just didn't. It just kind of sat there. That's how I see it. That's how I see so many different things, and that's something that I'm happy about. It's something I'm really proud of because that's a growth spurt for me. Because for so long, I was just offended by everything, literally offended by everything. And it took me a long time to recognize that I was offended because I was sensitive about it. And I was sensitive about it because it was something that I hadn't fixed. So, it's just one of those things, whereas if someone brings it up to you, you just kind of fly off the handle. You fly off the handle because you don't have it under control, because you haven't fixed it or worked on it, and you're sensitive about it, and you feel exposed. So that's when everything else kind of goes out of whack just a little bit. So in accepting things and people and things that they have to say, it helped me to realize that if I don't accept the things that people have to say or don't accept other people's opinion, I'm not accepting them. And it's important to me to accept everyone for who they are. Because at that point, I can make sense of it, and I don't have to go round and round with why did they do this or why did they do that? Because it doesn't matter. They did it because that's who they are. They did it because that's where they live, their headspace. That's their headspace. That's their heart. That's their spirit. That's why they did or said whatever it was. And I don't need to be offended by it because that's who they are. Now, it's an art. You got to learn how to do this thing. And I'm not perfect. And I do still get set off. But far less than I used to. Far less than I used to. I'm meditating more. Just doing things that can put my mind at ease. So that is pretty much my reflection from last year to this year. I am able to see things from a different perspective, and that perspective doesn't have to be only one. It doesn't have to be only my perspective. I can see it from other perspectives, and that's something to work towards, to be able to see things from other people's perspective while still maintaining your own. That's big. That's major. I also, I didn't want to spend a whole lot of time on that. Everybody reflects in their own particular way. Everybody sees things in their own particular way. And I do want to mention that I hope that you started to journal. Those of you that are listening, I hope you started to journal and just kind of jot things down, just kind of write things down so that you can see what you were feeling at one time. And then over a period of time, you can reflect back and say, oh, that's where I was. Oh, I was there. Or you can look back and say, I haven't moved. Because this podcast is about growth. This isn't the podcast that you just tune into and just play with. It's not. It's very serious to me. And I hope it's very serious to you as well, because it's about growth. It's about making your way through those dark spaces and those tunnels and those caves. It's about making your way through it. And if you're just tuning in just because, well, let me I don't have anything to do. And then after I'm done, or after the podcast is over, recap and everything, and you go on about your day and you don't consider anything, well, you're not getting anything from it. It's entertainment. And no one should be wasting their valuable 20, 30 minutes just on something that you're not gaining from. Unless you just want to have a little entertainment and just, hey, make it light. I feel like you can do some other things to make it light, but I want you to gain something from this. I gain something from each podcast I do. So on to acceptance. I never realized, and I need to take it back to my son's celebration. His homegoing. We prepared for that. I don't remember a lot, honestly. I remember some heated conversations because at that time in my life, I was very opinionated, and my opinion was the one that needed to reign supreme. My opinion was the one that ultimately mattered, and I'm a finesse it however I have to get what I want. State of mind that, that was it. And at the time, when my son passed, and it was just like, okay, so who's going to speak? Who's going to be the one to speak? And I knew who I wanted to speak. And, we kind of had some differences on that. we did end up working it out. And when it came time to, it's still difficult because I think about it and it's, yeah, uh, worked some things out, came back to it, and it was just like, okay, we're running through everything and, got everything situated, and this is what's going to happen first. And then after that, such and such will speak. And then after that, such and such will sing, going through all this. And it's like, okay, all right, got it. Now, for me, I like for a person to lead or to speak that knows the individual. And this person that spoke and led it absolutely knew my son, absolutely knew. But then there was a piece that I didn't really think much about. And, my husband's family has a church that his grandfather founded. I don't know the entire story, but generally everyone in their family, they are all, put to rest, all ceremonies, all funerals, things of that nature. It is through their church. With COVID, I wanted everyone to be comfortable, and it was pretty warm outside, so we did my son's celebration of life outside, outdoors. So this pastor of my family's church, came out and said some things that I didn't agree with. Said some things that, you don't do this, and it's, in the South, the Bible Belt. So sometimes things are said that are not as popular. And I feel like some of the things that she said were offensive to some of my son's friends. When you start talking about if you don't do this, you're going to hell. If you don't do that, you're going to hell. You start speaking in those terms, that's when you lose me. Because I don't know of anyone that's been to hell and back and experienced this burning flame and can tell me about it for a fact. I've been there. I already know, I've been to Chicago. That's where I'm from. I've been there, and I know it's cold in the winter, so I can talk to you about that. I can tell you that. I can talk to you and tell you about how my mom would take the battery out of her car and put it in the kitchen on a piece of newspaper so that she can put it back in her car in the morning so that the battery wouldn't freeze. That's how cold it is. Throughout the winter, you take your battery out of your car. If you don't have a garage, you take your battery out of your car and you put it in your house. And you get up a little bit earlier because you have to put your battery in the car and then start it up. That is custom. I can tell you about that. But when you stand up there and you say things like, if you don't do this, if you don't do that, you're going to hell. That is your belief. And for me, there was no reason to say those things. For me. Everybody stand up and clap your hands and I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it because I don't agree. I don't agree, and I'm not going to do that. Now, some did, and that was fine. But it had gone too far, I felt. And I was offended. I got upset. And I just sat there. I do remember that. And I remember getting on my phone and starting to text and, just kind of sending word, hey, this is enough. This is enough. I do remember that. And I attended another funeral, and I experienced the same thing. And I said to myself, now, I don't think anybody's trying to offend anyone. There's something here that I'm finding, to be pretty common. And that's this whole sermon that goes on, trying to convince people to do or say certain things in order to go to this place, go through these pearly gates. And, this is the only way you can do it. It's a scare tactic. And I don't like scare tactics. I don't think they serve well. Because eventually you get tired of the scare tactic and you just say, skip it. I'm going to just roll the dice. I'm going to just do what I feel like doing. Because you just get tired of it. You can't scare me but for so long. It's no different than, some of the teachers that I'd mentored. You can't stand up over anybody screaming and hollering. Eventually, they become used to all that screaming and hollering. It don't bother them. What do I care about you standing up over me screaming and hollering? And I know it's only so far you're going to be able to go. Same thing here. So after experiencing this funeral and this woman doing the same thing, oh yeah, there you go. And this woman went hard. I wasn't expecting this, but in her rant, that's what I'm going to call it. In her rant, she made, those threats about going to hell if you don't get right. You're going to hell. All these things. And I wondered to myself, I said, I wonder how the family is feeling about this message. I'm not going to say anything because that's, it's her church. Yes. This is their family's ceremony. And that's up to them to say what they feel needs to be said. So after, I didn't hear much, and I certainly wasn't going to say anything, but I did talk to my husband and my daughter about it. And they had strong opinions about the things that she said. But I noticed that my response was a little bit different. And the response was rooted in acceptance. Because like I said to them, there is no way I would have stood there and said those things. But she did. She took a risk saying what she had to say, what she wanted to say, the way she wanted to say it. And was not worried about consequences. She wasn't worried about it. And she literally said it. Don't be mad at me. Don't be mad at me. I'm here for you though, whatever you need. And she, like I said, she said some pretty harsh things. She really did. But at the same time, that's how she felt. And you have to accept how someone feels when you put them in a place like that one, where their message is the only message that is being heard. And I had to think about my son's ceremony and how I was offended by this woman. And I said to myself, now I'm the one that gave her the stage. If I can paraphrase, I'm the one that gave her that stage. I didn't know that woman. I knew that she was the pastor of my husband's family's church. I knew that. I knew of her. I had heard her before. And I'd had opinions about what I'd heard that particular time. But, hey, belongs to my husband's family church. That's the way we're going to do it. That's pretty much tradition. We are going to do it that way. Okay, fine. So let's make sure that she knows that, we don't want to go too far on religion. Our son wasn't religious. So let's make sure we don't go too far. Well, she did go too far. And I was upset about it. But why was I upset? Seriously, why was I upset? Because she said the things that she felt was necessary, the things that she felt were necessary to say. Is that why I was upset? Or was I upset because I felt like I dropped the ball? I felt like I didn't make sure that everything went perfect. If I can accept someone's opinion, it doesn't matter when and where they say it. It really and truly doesn't. But was I upset because I didn't deliver for everyone else? Something to think about. And I found that I was upset that she had said that in front of everyone else. That woman has been preaching that way for a very long time. And I gave her the power to stand there and say the things that she said and not like them. But what indication did she ever give me that she was going to stand up there and say the things that I would say? That woman never gave me that indication. And I asked her to do it. And when she didn't deliver the way I would have delivered or would have wanted her to deliver, I got frustrated and I got upset. But I know that everything happens for a reason. I don't believe in coincidences. I know that everything happens for a reason. I know this. So after attending that recent funeral from last week, basically, after attending that funeral, it made me reflect on my son's ceremony. And I said to myself, this is the same exact thing. What am I supposed to be getting out of this? I'm supposed to be getting something. This is the same exact thing. Just stand up there and start talking about some things and create your own agenda and stand up there and start churching. Okay, what do I need to understand about this? And there's nothing wrong with that. If you're religious, there's nothing wrong with that. That is just not my language. I'm not a religious woman. I'm more spiritual. I'm a spiritual woman. I'm not a religious woman. I don't mind admitting that. I love, I live and I learn like everyone else. Just so happens that my focus is something a little different. My focus right now is healing, and I'm healing through my spiritual lens. And when I think about the things that we get upset about, we literally, let me say me. I was upset that that woman didn't say the things that I would have wanted, but I put her there with no indication that she was going to say what I wanted. I didn't give her a script and say, are you going to read this? And wait for a yes, absolutely. And I won't say anything beyond that. I didn't do that. I gave her the stage. I gave her the platform to say the things that she said. And I started to realize I'm more like that woman than I would have admitted back then. I had been an educator for just over 10 years. I've been an educator, and I have never, ever gone to a school and taught only the curriculum. I have never done that. Never. I teach based on what is needed and what is necessary, and the curriculum gets folded in there. Curriculum actually comes second for me, I honestly, because whatever is needed and necessary is going to be far beyond the curriculum, because I set my own standards and I set my own expectations. And that's the way I've taught the entire time that I was teaching. I'm no longer a teacher. I like to call myself early retired. I'm no longer a teacher. I'm on a different track now. That is no longer my path. But I know that I have never gone in and stuck to just the curriculum, because I've had students who needed so much more than that. I've had students that were gifted and nobody paid attention to it and nobody realized it. I've had students that did not speak English as a first language, but they had put them into other categories, saying that there was some kind of a disability when there really wasn't. There was a language barrier. I have taught students that just needed a little more attention that you would normally give. So that's what you do. You give them everything that they need, that you know they need foundationally, and then you go beyond that. I'll check the curriculum later, and I'll check off all the boxes, because I know that I'm giving more than they actually need. That's the same thing that happened at that ceremony. It's the same thing that happened at that funeral. She felt that there was not only a message, but more than what needed to be said. And that's how she delivered. That's exactly how I used to teach. You only get offended if you're sensitive about it. That's the only time you get offended. I had parents coming to me, and every year, I've had parents come to me and say, okay, they worked the hardest. This is the hardest my child has ever worked. Or um, I can't believe that I've always thought that my child was an A student. I can't believe that because everybody's expectations are different. And I never gave them grades. I never did that. I had administration tell me I needed to do things like that, and I just wouldn't. I wouldn't. This woman is no different than me because she did what she felt was necessary. And both of these pastors were women. They did what they felt was necessary and they went beyond that. And if you were offended by it, okay. But this is my show. I'm paraphrasing again. Okay. But while I'm standing here, while I am here, you are trusting me to do what needs to be done. And that's what I did. And that's what she did. Both of those pastors, that's exactly what they did. They felt that they put their arms around everyone, held them close, and delivered. And that's what I felt I did in my classroom. It wasn't until that funeral that I attended last week that I realized, wait a minute, this is not a bash on anybody. I didn't like what she said, but I can accept it. And I can accept it because it's her truth. And if we can be accepting of everyone's truth, we will get through this so much better. We will learn so much more. It's almost like being out at the beach and you've gone beyond land. You're in the water and you just start swimming. When that current comes in, that current pushes you back. Now you can either fight the current or not. You're not going to beat the current. You can give it a shot. But by the time you go ahead and throw up your hands and go back to the shoreline there, when you go back to land, you're tired, you're exhausted. Because you fought a fight that you literally are not prepared to fight. That at that time you can't win. So when you take that step back and when you say, okay, yeah, let me accept that this wave is just more than what I got right now. Let me take a step back. And you go on back to land and you gather yourself and you get your bearings and you're good again and you rethink that thing as to whether or not, you want to go out on a boogie board or you want to try and swim against it, but you rethink that thing and you understand that there's some things that are greater and some things that just need to be accepted. And that was my lesson from last week, just acceptance. And I think that's a lesson for everything in life, is just to be able to accept what is there. You step back, you rethink, and you accept. You accept the opinions of others. You accept the temperament of others. You accept the mindset of others. Because the only thing you can change is your stuff. So having conversations with other people, trying to convince other people, no. We're here to learn. We're here to love each other. And we can go ahead and show, we can go ahead and display, we can do all of those things. But convince, that's in the hands of the other individual. But acceptance, that's always going to be you. That's always going to be your job, to be able to accept. Once you can accept, rethink, and go on about your growing and your learning, you'll be better off. Life will feel better. You'll be less stressed. You'll have less on you. It'll be a winning day. It'll be a winning life once you choose to accept. That's all I have for y'all. Acceptance. That's all it is. That's what I need you to know. For the new year, it's a year of acceptance. Everybody have a wonderful day. Everybody give acceptance some thought. And I'll be right back with the recap. And I hope you move forward on that. Y'all have a good one. Love you. Bye. Or should I say peace? Love you. That's what I'll say. Peace.
Hey fam, I am back. I'm back for the recap. I still got that even on into the next year. I did listen to my sound. I do apologize for my sound. It seems to be a little bit weird, a little bit off. But hey, if you want to listen, if you're going to listen, you're not going to let that stop you. You won't let that deter you. But just for the recap, I just want to run through it real quick. I never like my recaps to last very long, only a minute or two. Sometimes I get a little long-winded. But today was my opportunity to get myself back in. I've been on, like I said, a real long nap. That's a conversation for another day. My last podcast was November 5th, and here I am on the 10th recording one, and it feels good to be able to record it again and get back into the swing of things. Just the first point that I wanted to make is this was pretty much the overall message. Now, I know, I talked about the reflection or whatever. Y'all know what a reflection is. You know how I do that. But I want to jump right into it. The overall message was about how we take things in, how we process them, how we become offended about things, and how sensitive we can become to something. But I just want to say, for me, being offended literally means that there's something that's triggering you, and a trigger is something that you haven't worked on, or something that's kind of broken, just kind of tucked, just kind of deep down within. So you cannot be offended by something unless you're sensitive about it. And you're sensitive about it because it's something that needs to be worked on. That's at the end of the day, that's what it is. That's where that sensitivity comes from. I spoke about a situation last week and how many things were said that were considered to be offensive to other people. I don't know that I was offended. I just didn't agree. And I'll say that I wasn't offended by it. I just didn't agree. That is something that I really wanted to drive home, was that whole thing about being offended. Being offended is your exposure. I hate to say it that way, but being offended is your exposure. Literally. The next point I wanted to make was about journaling. I don't know if you decided to journal. I don't know if that could be a New Year's resolution. I don't even know. And I try not to even do New Year's resolutions. I just like to call my new year a new beginning. But journaling, if you don't journal, I don't know how you measure your growth. You will not remember everything that you experience, but when you put it on paper, it's right there. You don't have to remember it. It's right there. Then you can tap back in. Then you can measure your growth. So that's why I wanted to kind of stick in there that whole journaling piece, because it is very important. And the last piece that I wanted to focus on, which does kind of go back into being offended or not being offended, but the last point that I focused on was just the fact that accepting things, accepting people, and accepting what they have to say from their space, regardless of how egregious it may be. Realize that we have to accept the opinions of the most racist, the most incredibly disrespectful people. It doesn't mean that you have to bow down to them. It means that you accept who they are. You don't allow it to seep into who you are, and you move on. That's what that means. I've accepted that. I already know that part. And you're able to continue to move on. So that was a big piece of it. And also the fact that when you experience something, probably the things that are most profound to you, there's a message in there. And the message that I found was the message from that pastor that I didn't particularly agree with. Ooh, excuse me. I didn't particularly agree with her, but after I gave it some thought, I recognized that I've been exercising that game for a really long time in the classroom while I was educating. I was giving what I thought needed to be given and beyond that. We check those boxes later, but I know what you need foundationally, and I'm going to work that angle. And we can come back to whatever little obscure points that need to be made. I have been doing that for years. My entire career in the classroom, that's what I was doing. And I was successful at it for a good while. So the messages that you receive, even though they may be a little painful, they're not meant to harm or hurt. But you have to be in that right space to receive. And that's the only way you grow. Be in that right space to receive. That is my recap, folks. I will be back with you very, very soon. I have so much to say, so much built up stuff, but I'm going to have to break it up into categories and segments. And happy to be back. Let's make this year a better year than the year before. Continue to grow, love, and learn. Live a life of fervor, y'all. See you soon. Bye-bye.